Greetings. Welcome to ALLATRA TV. Today my co-host is Alexei. Hi. And we have a special guest today. She is astrophysicist, Elena Podladchikova. She got an award for having a discovery and also was a supervisor of the special program, and now she deals with a special.
Здравствуйте, друзья, спасибо.
And first of all, I would like to thank you for your investigations of the sun, of the sun crown, and those works which you have already accomplished and those which you have been working on, because it is very progressive direction of science, which will help us to understand the space, but will also help us to understand those processes which we are having here on our planet, which is very important. And firstly, we would like to ask you to tell you about your investigations that you are dealing with, and what role does the sun play in our solar system.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much, Olga.
Я занимаюсь
I
межпланетной и межзвездной
deal
средой,
with
процессами, которые управляют
interstellar
совместно
and
всеми телами в нашей
interplanet
Солнечной системе
sphere
и в межзвездной среде.
and
И, как
interstellar
известно,
sphere.
существует
And as you
4
know, there
главные
are
силы в нашей
four main
Вселенной.
forces in our
Электромагнитная — это одна из
universe.
самых основных
Electromagnetic is the
гравитационных.
first one, and
В основном
gravitation
мы
one. And
занимаемся
mainly we
первыми
deal
двумя,
with
которые
the
я
first
назвала.
two, which I have mentioned.
Солнце влияет на все,
The sun
на
influences
на
everything
наших
on
планетах,
our
на
planets,
нас, на нашу
on
жизнь, на наше
our
самочувствие,
on us, on our life, on
на
our
процессы,
health,
на
on all the
сезоны.
processes, seasons.
И вот сейчас мы как раз
And
изучаем, как
now we
электромагнитные
are
процессы на Солнце
investigating how
влияют
electromagnetic processes influence
на электромагнитные процессы на Земле.
electromagnetic
Это так
processes
легко
on
сказать,
Earth.
вот их,
It's
их
simple to
очень много.
say,
Например,
but
когда
they are very
происходят
numerous.
на Солнце
For
вспышки,
example,
наше
when
настроение
there are
может
sparkles on
поменяться,
the sun, we
потому что
can
у нас
have a change of
крови
mood
могут
because in our
индуцироваться
blood
в венах
we
токи,
have
потому что проводимость
inductions
меняется,
of
Солнце
streams
меняется, процессы
in
меняются,
our
наше
blood,
настроение
and
меняется.
so all
Ну и,
processes
конечно, хотим понять,
change in
как все
our
происходит.
body, and our mood changes. So,
Как
and
это
we want to
даже
understand how it all
связано
happens
с
and how it
мировыми
is connected
процессами
with
на нашей
world
Земле,
processes
потому что очень многие
on our
процессы, они
planet, because
соответствуют циклу
many
солнечной
processes
активности.
they
Мы хотим найти
correspond to
механизмы этого тоже.
the processes on the
Например,
sun.
вот в Бельгии, вы
For
приехали в
example,
Бельгию,
in
все
Belgium,
мы знаем картину
as
Брейгеля,
we
бельгийских
know
художников
the
голландских.
picture
Там
of
снег и человечки. Вот
Holland
в Бельгии, в
Holland
Голландии нету
painters.
снега, вот тогда
And
Брейгель расписывал
it's
чудесные
interesting.
очень картины
There is no
снега.
sun
Вот там был
in
холод в некоторых регионах, вот
Netherlands now,
написано
but
было,
then when these pictures
вся
were
жизнь
painted,
написана на этих городах.
it was snowing then, and many
Но
things
сейчас,
had
конечно,
changed
есть
since
такое
then.
индустриальное
And
приложение,
now
почему
we have a
мы хотим выйти в
special
космос. Мы должны
industrial
быть как
application because
человечество,
we
и это должно
have
быть
to go into
безопасно. Поэтому мы
space,
должны
but
изучать космос.
it should
В
be safe. That is
космосе,
why we
в
should
межзвездной
study
среде
this sphere.
небезопасно.
In the space,
Даже в
it is
нашей
not
Солнечной
safe,
системе
and in our
небезопасно.
solar system, it
Например,
is not safe.
космонавт
For
полетел,
example, a
приземлился на Марсе,
cosmonaut
на Луне, возможно, на
landed
Венере в
the Mars
будущем.
or
Но это
landed
небезопасно,
the
потому что в этот
Venus,
момент даже
but
сейчас космический корабль не
it is
может
not
заряжаться
safe
или
because
большое облако плазменного,
because
которое позволяет
there
кораблю
can be
двигаться в
some
раз
space
и
processes
очень опасно для человека.
in the space, and it is very dangerous for a person. And mostly we have to understand these processes to make the life of a person on other planets where there are no such atmosphere as we have here, and especially during long journeys, to make them safe, to make them not dangerous. So we don't know how to provide this safety. That is why we are learning these processes. So it is the main idea. So, and at the moment, I am dealing with two satellites, which the whole humanity had been building for 30 years. And this satellite, solar rocket, this idea about this satellite appeared 30 years ago in the International Society in Russia, and it was an idea to build a satellite and to provide it with telescopes. As you know, there are telescopes on the Earth, but for example, it is impossible to build an X-ray telescope or ultraviolet because we have an atmosphere, and this diapason is not transparent for the atmosphere. That is why we should send telescopes to the Earth, because the hottest part of the sun, they could be studied in X-ray and ultraviolet rays. And the idea was to send this satellite to the sun and to make it as close as possible to the sun to study these processes. And this has been done. And this satellite has a very complicated orbit. It has a lot of devices, and it should go around Venus, and finally it should come close, very close, at 0.2 astronomic. And that is why we think we will see something special, because at that distance we can see some processes which control the sun crown. Maybe it can be a special hidden source of energy there, because we have such a supposition, because it is much hotter. It's abnormally hot. So it's about 1 billion grades, and it's a constant stream of it's a constant warm stream from that part, and that it's not clear for us, and that's what we want to understand. And I hope we will be able to do it now. And also we tested some tools that will allow us to go to interstellar sphere, and to make sure that they exist in this environment, they can function. So soon we will use some special materials, and we'll send the first satellite to different stars. It can take several decades, and these are the main directions of our investigations. And we expect a great progress in cosmophysics, because when we have such satellites, it means a great progress, because a lot of people had been working on this project, and finally it was fulfilled. And something special should happen. For example, now we have a camera in our mobiles, and it was a situation when somebody thought in the past, how can we make some photos in the space? Yes, there is also a Hubble telescope, but it's a different kind of telescopes. It observes other planets and other stars, not only our sun, not only galactics, but also planets and the life on the Earth. Actually, we don't deal with the special projects how to find life on other planets, but it's a great motivation for us to find life in our universe. When we were children, the life on the Earth or the life in the space was looked for with the help of some satellites. But and we get some signals. We had an idea that somebody was sending us signals, but then we understood that there are special stars, pulses, and our parents, for example, they are a little bit upset because we send different signals to different directions, but nobody answers us. We even send the Voyager telescope. It didn't investigate the sun, but it sent this telescope sent some information, some messages to our to other universes, but nobody came across this satellite. There was an idea to find the life, and now the search for life is continuing with big enthusiasm, and my colleagues are studying the origin of the Earth on the life on the Earth, and so. As I mentioned, the activity on the Earth is not constant, but it was not forever. When the sun was born, it was very young, but it was very hot and nobody could survive on any planets. But now it became quieter, and now we can live better. We can live on this planet. So step by step, the sun was getting used to the life in this universe, and so scientists who are looking for the origin of the life on our planet, we understand that firstly the oxygen appeared and some simple creatures appeared. They appeared, they came from the water and then returned back because it was very hot. So actually, when we study the sun or stars of the sun type, we try to understand how the life started on the Earth. And one of the directions which are very developing nowadays is quite difficult to imagine, but American program Living in the Stars, it underlines that plasma clouds could bring some substances which initiated. There is a hypothesis which initiated some processes which led to the start of life on the Earth. So it's for sure that life appeared thanks to some substances which were traveling around in the universe, in the space. It's even according to the laws of physics. In the closed system, entropy it is maximized and nothing really happens, so nothing can be developed. But if the system is open, then something can be structured or self-structured. It's a law of thermodynamics. So that is an idea how life started, because something appeared from the outer space. It's for sure. So these are our wishes nowadays, and it's a great wave in our science nowadays that we are not looking for a life on the pulses, but we want to find the life on other planets, and something that nobody expected. As we remember from our childhood, this question about the life on Mars, and there are many different hypotheses which can be proved or disapproved that the life existed on Mars. For example, we see some indications that there were some rivers. There is an idea that there used to be water there. So the structure of Mars is being studied. So why do we live quite safely in our universe? Because we are protected with our atmosphere, and only some phenomena can come through to our planet. By the way, it is dangerous if a person is very ill, for example, has a problem with the heart during this magnetic activities. It's better to try to stay calm, to be at home or in the nature, not to worry, not to be nervous, and it's statistical proof about that.
This is why Mars is not protected. Mars does not have an electromagnetic field because of the structure of the planet. The planet is supposed to have this magnetic field. So one of this kind of profound theories that it's possible that the magnetic field there became an erosion of this magnetic field because of the coronal bursts of Mars that's just been blown away. And then it wasn't able to regain itself, and there's just a small atmosphere in Mars. It's just sort of being induced there by the tension between particles. So there's something, but it's not a real atmosphere. And what was actually fascinating, no one actually foreseen the fact that we know life on Mars, but in other places in our solar system, we haven't heard of that. And people studying like Venus, they found a presence of organic life form. They found phosphine, which is the highly probable product of organic life forms. Nobody expected it before because the moon it's really hot there and they have like this greenhouse effect there. But still, this kind of discovery actually will turn this science into a direction for us sending satellites to the Venus. We had this satellite to Saturn. It had really close to the belts of Saturn, around the Saturn, but haven't found any signs of life. But it was kind of interesting to look at the belts of Saturn. So that was the technologies are being developed all the time. It's we can see much better, much more precisely, but these like the absence of is the presence of those 4,000 exoplanets with spectral analysis, you can find planets with oxygen in the atmosphere or like just with chemical compounds that are used for us. You can actually see how far the active star is, whether does the magnetic field in such a planet exists, so potentially can we live and survive there because we are calculating their its habitability and then Russian, which is still habitability, so that whether this planet actually is an habitable zone. And so in parallel as well, there's an idea to have moon surface colonized for robots to build space rockets for them to be launched from the moon because it will be much simpler and much broader scale and the bigger capability to use this autonomous moon equipment with cameras and everything. So all of that is being developed in line altogether harmoniously. Thank you, Helen. We have also such a question to you. The satellites that you've just mentioned for us, when you've corrected the trajectory, when it's still flying, do they have like the measurement for other parameters, like the level of radiation in this space, or it makes pictures on the way? What would be interesting for the researcher? Yes, they try to measure surrounding and particles that surrounds, and so electrons or anything that charge particles, alpha particles, and the composition of the particle, electric and magnetic fields of the particles. That's what is measured all the time. So there's also wavelengths measuring whether they're present and the wavelengths and the density of wavelengths or any fluctuations. This is the secondary properties of the matter because there's not always waves in the matter present. Or is there any radio signals? And in many instruments, there's a wide range of measurements. A telescope is not one or not a singular. It has different range of measurements to be conducted. There is a spectrograph that actually is looking for a far distance object and just trying to measure the speed of that object. So it does the diagnostics or the temperature of that far away object. Apart from picture, this is what is being done at the moment. So everything that we know how to measure, we're trying to get measured. But in general, those are the types of diagnostics of magnetic field again of the faraway object, which is all that we can to do. Why am I asking is for simply because if we would be able to build like a base on the moon and then to fly somewhere from there, because you don't have to go through the Earth's gravitation field and forces. So how long a person can stand in the space when he's not protected with the Earth's magnetic field, which protects us from the solar flares and everything, because there's a radiation, you still have to get through to send people to Mars just to make a rocket. It's objective A, but to make a person be able to survive the flight, yes, it's being studied right now, and it's also good for the spacecraft and space crew. It's not supposed to be like as strong as before, but just to be a healthy person, to just come there, but was not this the youngest possible, because like let him have kids before, but then to go to space, because we don't really know how this space will influence him, because there is an influence to the spine. The person who've been half a year in zero gravity, they have to make a special exercise to just restore the spine and all the vertebrae. We have protective equipment like in the nuclear reactors, but it's all complicated and complex, and we just like to just simply live there and not just like, in a spacesuit and a spacecraft just to be in a hostile environment. So there is something to be protected from. The biggest thing to be protected from is if there's solar flare, and this solar flare burst and outburst. It has strong waves of the highly charged particles, but they can again get to your place. But it doesn't happen often. Sometimes it's often, but if it's often, they will not go to your direction. But if they go in one direction, you have to know that they're going to you, and you have to be protected. There was one case when the flare actually came to Earth. It was just like once in 100 years, and it happened in 1850 something, and it happened to be on Earth, and shot actually not completely, because it first going to ionosphere, it's been ionized, but the particles are still being spilled out. So it's at some places on the Earth they have the power outage for a few days, and for this in space to be a person present in the space or in another planet, it's better for that not to happen. Alpha particles, they're present there, so this is just the pure radiation that is there. I would also like to ask you, I think it's interesting for everybody, because in space, the most progressive telescope and everything, do you see there any type of different outside objects or signs of life, or were you able to observe any sort of things like that? You know, I do work for quite some time, and all the people are working all together, and everybody's seeing what others are seeing, and to see something else from what everybody else is seeing in the point that I work in accordance with the protocols and everything, I would say no. We would like to, but it's no. I am a dreamer myself, but I'd like to see that. But we're just have to interpret or to see that it would be such rational and understandable, or Like, I know personally that those cases they've seen the UFO in the sun, it wasn't UFO, it was instrumental effects. Sometimes on the cam, on CCD cam, like in other, there's just the lines on the camera, so just like this shot that's going through. Sometimes in the sun, when we are observing through in the X-ray or ultraviolet, is such a wonderful, strange structure, but it's just a true plasma crown of the sun structures. And sometimes the comments are really nicely flowing through. It's really nice when the comment is coming. But of course we are able to see comments and sometimes even points. If you're looking from Earth and from the surface of the planet, so that in the wide range of light, or then it's possible. But apart from that, so that I myself would notice something. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to see anything like that. But I also like to clarify, it was so interesting when you mentioned about the progress of the finding out exoplanets and life on Venus and the bacteria that was found. What type of life or what the form of life does it says or state? Can it be studied, or like, can it be intellectually developed? What form of life? Yeah, of course it can be. There is such a possibility. So yes, so the gas that was found, it can be actually the sign of industrial activity of the civilization. It's so nice because it's so hot there. It's 200 degrees, like this greenhouse effect. So yes, this greenhouse effect that is there, and it is possible, and for other like leftovers, I would mention that way. If somebody would make a hypothesis that was a civilization or the product of a civilization, or the ones that've been there, or before us, so that the finding out this gas could actually be the sign of that. But it can actually be together with just the life that's just being formed at this moment of time. I also interesting, does it exist the possibility that this intellectual developed life exists, but also in a different form that we are not used to? Like, for example, that it's not receptive to our eyes, or we are in contact that or traces of that, but we are just not receiving that, or thinking that it's something natural because we are unable to see, or there's such a on Mars or on Moon. It's a possibility because we know that the electromagnetic field or range of perception that we have. So we have our optic range, then the infrared. We're looking radio frequencies and range, yes, so it's possible. And we always see something different and be perceiving that and understanding it in a different way as well. So it is always a possibility. I support that fully, but not only on the different ranges of like electromagnetic rays and rays. On different scales, there are some many theories that on the big scales, cosmological, the time goes differently, and it's theoretically and experimentally actually proven on the small scales. The processes are actually going differently, we define it differently, and we're not sure that we can understand it fully. This is why it's possible that it's different. Quantum mechanics has a big way, which includes the consciousness part in quantum mechanics, because de Porwood, who is the father of quantum mechanics, he found a paradox. So it mathematically placed everything, understood sort of everything. Was his close one also understood it, was as him, this paradox actually stayed there. For example, that the electron, we observe it in one state or in one place, and we can't observe it. We can't observe it together in the different space as well. But if we observe it as a wave, because there's a duality of the electron, of the wave and corpuscular, or can both be a wave. Then it interferes in two different places at the same time, which is connected to the Gore's paradox. So we understand that it's there. So, but why is that so? So the principle of undecisiveness. The more we want to know, the less we know in the quantum mechanics, because we can't really know the position, the place, and the interactions of an electron or of the particle. We can know the speed. We can know only one property. We can just know, like, approximately. If we want to know it really decisively and accurately, then we're just not having it fully understood. In different ranges and different scales, there are different things, and the gravity works differently. So I support that. We just don't know how to look for the signs, so that we will have to know even more, and in our lifespan we will find other ways, because there are people who think of that all the time, enthusiasts. They're looking and trying to prove it scientifically with the type of testing and experimenting that we are used to so far. What do you mean on different scales? What is it? What does it actually practically mean? Different scales is an interesting thing, actually. I remember in school. Oh, no, it wasn't at school actually. At the first year of a university of the math analysis, and the teacher started to say epsilon and area. So what is the area here? So there's 1 and 2. So around it's something small, like around 0. And if we are finding this small place around 0, we're just mathematically, description of the world is changing completely. Like mathematically speaking, what we are seeing from the physics point of view, what we see as our eyes is just the macro world, our eyesight, and so we are used to that, and this is the macro world. And it's still not macro, it's not, so it's just medium sizes. Okay, let's put it that way. But if we would to have, like, in this mathematical area, it's not, everything is so completely different there. It's even described differently, and you can see it in different way. This is why I'm so interested in our satellite of, because it was always also look like in the microscope, actually. In the microscope and those mathematical formulas that we were thinking of before, because it's really hard to calculate, and there's so geniuses in the world that can calculate it. Right now, people don't really want to, don't really need to. We need another type of this study, so that telescope and microscope, so the person saw it, understood. It's so much better than that. And we can do like an analysis of any sort, like a spectral analysis, and right, so that those scales in the cosmology, which is the life of the universe, life of the galaxy, those are the people who live there and live in this world. They think in periods and of tens of thousands of years and even millions of years. So that's sort of the whole thing. So what happens is that what we've used to, like in regular sizes of our life, they usually act on really small distances or really big distances, so it's not from here. We also have such a question to you. Is it already known to scientists where and how this asteroid belt around Mars has happened or be present? And as far as we know, there is in some of those asteroids traces of water. Like, how can it be there? How can it be happening? And all of that.
Yeah, on big scales of for the asteroid belt appeared that one planet was crashed into parts. It is quite a theory which is believed. Yes, most of this it's a crashed planet. Yes, in asteroids there are even metals. And suddenly, last year, a very strong tendency appeared. Let's fly to these asteroids. Let's try to do it. Let's create such an infrastructure that could fly to these asteroids and take some measurements in a constant amount. And water, where is water from there? I can't answer this question. If you know, please answer. It is a hypothesis. I have never heard about this fact before. Yes, it is interesting to know why these asteroids cannot be attracted to Mars or Jupiter. This has this reason, the same reason as why planets don't do it. This gravitation equilibrium, when there is no attraction and they can fly on a particular orbit, but it is not defined. Sometimes these asteroids leave their orbit, but there was not a catastrophe yet, at least during this our life. Maybe it was before. Some meteors, Tungus meteorite, probably not, but probably earlier. This processes of rotation of planets during our lifetime is quite stable, but if we take a bigger scale, it is quite unstable and changing very quickly and often. The objects lose their orbits, and if they leave their orbit of gravitation equilibrium, they can be attracted or can fall somewhere. Yes, I see. Thank you. And so it's clear that there was a planet which was broken into pieces, but what has happened? What happened to it? Or there is an idea what size it was or what mass it was, so that equilibrium is not broken, because all the planets, as we know, everything is connected. Maybe you know something about this. Yes, we can count mass, but only now I understood that we can count the mass of this asteroid, and probably it has been counted. Just to take into consideration this equilibrium of solar system. So probably the reason was some kind of special outer object which came to the point of gravitation. That is the most probable theory. But maybe there is another reason. The reason which we cannot understand. Maybe some inner processes, as you know, planets are born and die. There are some reasons for it. So this could be. There is a theory that the moon it originated during some clashes, catastrophes which took place a long time ago, because the Earth became a little bit heavier, and probably there was another object, and the orbit was changed a little bit. But there was a comet, Shoemaker level, and it was not very large, and it fell on Jupiter, and it died in a very beautiful way. And why we know about that, as I know it was 1993 or something like that, because X-ray telescopes appeared in the space, and it was taken for photos of how it came to. Yes, and it's good that it was Jupiter, not the Earth. It came from the far, and it rotated at a big distance around the Sun, about 5,000 years. And thanks God, it came to Jupiter, but Jupiter is the heaviest planet of the solar system. And did the way how it was flying change or not during the time while it was flying? No, it was not flying to it. The last time it was flying, it fly past several thousand years ago, and now, as you know, orbits change a little bit, and this time it went to the gravitation sphere of Jupiter, and yes, it was quite beautiful. Sometimes there are some occasional changes. It also can take place, can occur, but nobody thought then that it's so good that it was Jupiter but not the Earth. But on a big time scale, such processes are possible. They happen everywhere. Yeah. So there is another question. As we're talking about asteroid belt, which are the remnants of the planet Phaeton, and I would like also to know about Orion belt, because there are also some legends and traditions which are connected with these stars. So, do exoplanets exist there? Do we know anything about the life on that part of the space? What I can say about this? So Sirius is a very bright star. That is why it inspires people, and they study it in different ways. That Sirius A and Sirius B, and it is quite an old star than the sun, approximate, yes, in stellar evolution. Yes, it is much older, 5 billion years older. We know it quite exactly according to some characteristics. There are exoplanets, but as for particular planets, I cannot say exactly. If we study these planets more precisely, as for inhabitants and possibility of that, I am not quite sure, unfortunately. There are many planets, and as for this, we didn't pay attention to it because it is not quite particular of the earthly type, and the sun, and this planet is not quite the type of the sun. And as I know, the scientists don't precisely study this, and they study only something which is similar to us, to understand where we originated from, and or where we could go when we destroy everything here, where we could go then. But no, I can't say exactly about such planets, but planets can be practically everywhere. They are not all discovered, but there are different methods of discovering planets. As for Orion, I cannot also say a lot about its physical indicators. So yes, we are separated. For example, astronomers study positions, the way they rotate closer or farther, when it come closer, and so on. And planetologists study exoplanets. Yes, we are a little bit separated nowadays. Unfortunately, I can't say anything exactly about Orion. And can I ask a hypothetical question? As we were talking about alternative kinds of life, can we even think about the could there on the Orion could the life exist there? It is quite a normal hypothesis nowadays, because people of different Yes, and people who are of age of our parents, they are quite narrow-minded. As there were, some signals from these parts, then there is no life, but then exoplanets were found, and now there is an idea that there is a life on other planets, at least according to the theory of probability. And there is an idea to find the life of our type on other planets. Maybe there are different kinds of humans, for example, green. Maybe they do not speak, but make some other sounds. Yes, yes, we are sure that we will find such a planet with some strange humans. Maybe they will talk with ultrasounds, but we will find them. For example, bats. They cannot see, they are blind, but they perceive everything with ultrasound. So they analyze what is where. Even such and they can orient in different spheres. Yes, even dogs can hear some sounds that we can't hear. So the official science can looks at it now quite positively, and probably the life could exist there. And if we return to our life of our format, there is an information that in a person's body there are elements from far planets, for example, molybdenum, for example, and they also exist in plants. And there are articles which say that they are mostly useful for people. And the most interesting that question is in what objects in the space we could meet such objects. Yes, molybdenum exists on planets, on stars. Yes, for sure, this molybdenum, this element did not exist on Earth. It came from some stars, some asteroids, and it is considered that it exists on some stars. It can be found with spectrum analysis in the open space, in the far space, which is not in our solar system. It can also be found with the spectral analysis. On planets, I'm not quite confident if it exists on exoplanets, but on Earth it didn't exist in the beginning, and it came to us from far space or from a special object. Maybe it existed from the very beginning, maybe when planets were quite close, maybe it came then, but it did not exist on Earth. So the sun started to be a little bit colder, and gravitation power started to structure the matter. And when everything cooled down, it started to repeat its rotation in the atom structure. It is quite comfortable to exist. So then it didn't exist on Earth, but from what object? Maybe from another comet or another planet, or a special object of such kind that has quite a big period of rotation and comes to us quite seldom. There is such a possibility. That is the most probable theory, which is the fact that it came from the far space.
На самом деле, мы недавно, буквально несколько дней назад, беседовали с
Actually, several days ago, we had a conversation with Michael Summers, and he teaches at George Mason University. And he said that for each of us, as he is studying exoplanets, there are planets. There is a planet where we can live. That is why, probably, in the nearest future, we will be able to find it. And there is another question. All these studies which you are doing, is it an international team? Are many people working together? Or each person deals with there and then you combine together?
As long as I work, I just really like the international teams that are in place because the space studies and tests, if we are speaking mostly on the instruments that we are sending, it's quite expensive. And it's impossible to be paid by one country. This is why there's just like the coordination between the countries. So just lands, as far as I know, on the solar orbiter, the idea was placed by the enthusiasts 30 years ago, and on the number of the satellites, but then the infrastructure mostly right now in the world on those tests and studies, and the NASA usually takes care of so that US Space Agency, European Space Agency, Chinese and Russian Space Agency, so they have joint plans. And but as far as we understand that among the people who take care of the space and the scientists, there's so many enthusiasts and they are motivated and just bring this like this fresh new life like force. This is as far as I look at the latest like tens of years, this is how it happens. So like there's like this truth, the seeds of truth. Maybe this is why I like it so much as concept, that the person will be always interested by the internal part and the external part, meaning the sky above a person. So this is present, this exists, and so in such a unity of scientists, it just exists as true principle. There are many different scientists, but the truth is there because this is why it would be impossible to do so for so many years. Do you know what? We have usually a big and international teams, and this broadcasts are done by international teams as well. What we mentioned is that when people are united by just joint idea for the common good, this actually really helps in goal achievable. And as far as I understand, the same thing could actually happen to see if that would happen in scientific area and sphere. I would just like to say that on the platform International Lot for Public Movement, right now we have the global project called the Creative Society, which is the society where every single person would have lived happily and in comfort and would be provided with everything. And as far as the objectives and tasks for is to find out from people where would they like to live, where every person could truly show their potential, and for it to be the world who take care of every person. And this is why I would like to ask you, how do you see the development of the society as far as I understand? As far as we know that he has the internet connectivity problems, he would like to ask, how do you see the development of astrophysics, the importance of that in this society? And if we can dream of the perfect society, how important is this for us, for people, to develop astrophysics and to study other planets? Do you know, I think that first and foremost, this is a dream. This is the dream of a person. This is a dream of a future, of a better life, and it's somewhat is being implemented into like at some part and portion of activities. And we know that there is a sky above us that's actually interesting for us. And for many philosophers of the past have mentioned before that everybody's actually bothered by the role that we have in this world. And it's so important to think of that. And we would really like for the Society of Astrophysics would also have more people who would really want to bring this goodness to people, to have a friendship, relationship with other people. There's many things of other, and like this is the life that we have, right? The children are so important for them to grow and all of that. I wouldn't say that that we've grown in a bad way. I just like for them to have the better things in a way, so that maybe we could give them more kindness and goodness, because the more kindness and goodness there is, then the more people are getting united. Oh, what is important, scientific, what I think of is some time ago, because I take care of the plasma, environments in the space, the structure of the planets and stars, so there are many scientists in that area. And that had happened that we found the magnetosphere and the ionosphere has so many closed up data because the countries competed. Some were known more, some knew less, and right now that had happened to became less of that. This is the tendency or the trend that everything's supposed to be open. So the solar data are open. They're supposed to be open because they're done for the society. And I think this is the wonderful trend, because as soon as this data became open, it created more of the broader understanding, and education for kids became better. All of it together for the upcoming generation. And for the science, it's so important to be accessible and open, for us not to have something so complicated that no one can never or ever understand, because there was such a problem of the separation of sciences. There's too many divisions, too many spheres, and it's so hard to understand from other areas. So this is the openness and the openness of accessibility of the science. There's supposed to be more than astrophysics for people to understand why do we study that, why do we have that. Then we have like more power and will and more enthusiasm from everybody. This is as far as if you would sum that up, so that the openness of the communication and astrophysics and different scientists, the objective of science is they are supposed to be objective for the society as a whole. So the society has to create the request for the tests and studies. How do you see the process of development? This has to be 100%, because scientists, I don't want to say it that way, because it's like we are doing something for ourselves. We just like to think of the nuclear bomb. It's not supposed to be like that. Like that way of development. There's supposed to be 100% the request from society for that, because maybe possibly somebody can study something and somebody's supposed to know what to do. We have to have this discussion so that we have such an area of development in science. The project is supposed to be a public outreach, which is called itself in English. In Russian, it will be also a public outreach, which is because this is like the objective, and it doesn't go from the soul usually or from the society, but still, most of the time, or always, the real scientists, they were responding to the society's request, and it's supposed to be only that way. Otherwise, it's just not needed, really. This is just somebody's making fun or whatever. There are people with such internal understandings, and that I have to, or to put a star or bring the star from the skies. There are also people like that, but there's so few people like that because they're not going to the general areas. They also need to have a place in this world, to place to create, a place to be creative. And I would also like to ask you a question. For us to be able to see development of all of the tests and studies, for them to be like from the people and for the goodness of the people, and not just in a commercial or military interest. How could we create such a trend in the science and in the society for everything to be developed for the people, for every single person? Let's try to analyze it all together. Even during my time, in the work that I have, the accessibility that was present there has changed. The programming languages like the Python and Linux, right? So the Linux, everybody's developing that, and Python also everybody's developing that. And if there's a new technology, if there's new app, it's really fast going to our daily life. Before that, it was so much complicated. Licensing and everything. We have like the request from astrophysics and physics. I don't know why that happens. Let's think together why that happens that way. That we have to write it into accessible type of language. They are supposed to be open completely and fully because we are spending so much money for those experiments, not just for understand this secretly for ourselves, but for everybody essentially. But the technological project is actually moving, and when everything's moving, when everything's being developed, when somebody does, whether it's good or not, it's sort of is good because beforehand you did something until you explain it how it works and like what it's done, like on the basic level, and it was really hard. Nobody understood like somebody could do something the same app, and right now, no. Nobody does the same thing all over the world. Right now it's public and all the statements of publication is openly accessible. Before that you had to pay for the journals and everything. Right now that's all the publication is completely open. So I think this is good, but who did it and why? We don't know why the trend appeared itself, right? So we think that it's good, but I think there's something that maybe we just used to tricks and everything, but what can be done is that maybe that what was done is good, but still it's maybe we just need to what would you say? What would you answer to this question from the other side? Like what would you want? I'm interested to hear. As people, as the public who are interested in the science, who would like this exchange to happen, what could those people actually say? I think that everything's dependent on the society. This is so important for the information to be actually widely accessible. But here we have the question of the development of the society itself. So like, what are the objectives for this information to be used? And if all of us are trying to thrive for one area, so like in creative or the ones that's building, it's like the ants who are building the ant house. So that would be wonderful.
Yes, I had a question which I couldn't understand. Yes, the actions are quite good, but what is the purpose? Because, as I see, it's normal that there is a special discovery, for example, when startup starts or some financial issues. When it is created, it is not bad because new people come and develop it, but sometimes it should be done quite slowly because it is paid, and it is also quite many of such cases, as you understand.
Лен, вы знаете, у меня на самом
Yes,
деле просто
Elena.
до этого получилось,
Yeah,
что интернет
yeah,
немножко
my internet
сбоил,
connection was a little
вот,
bit
я
slow,
начал говорить о том,
and I started
что
to say that
как раз, возможно, в том обществе,
probably that in
которое
that society
мы хотели
that
бы
we
в
would
котором мы
like
хотели бы жить,
to
где
live
каждый
in, where
человек
everyone,
счастлив
each
и
person
живет
is happy and
в
lives
безопасности, в
in
достатке,
safety and
где
has a
все
prosperous life,
направлено
and
именно на
where
улучшение
everything is
человечества
directed
сразу, в
to
том числе, конечно,
the
и наука.
well-being of
И
the whole
каждого
humanity,
человека в
and
отдельности.
of course
Раз
science
у
too.
нас
And
запущен такой проект, который
we
сейчас
have
реализуется
this
по всему миру,
project,
называется
the project has been launched, which is called the Creative Society, and that is a society where human life is the main, and there are also some points about what you were speaking about transparency of information, and the purposes which are set in before science, they should correspond to the interest of people, but not some business structures. And I would like to ask you how you see your profession in your industry, how it would develop in such a society which is directed to well-being of all people. Yes, thank you for such an interesting question. Actually, the society, creative society, which is full of kindness, which it will help to progress. It will add to progress because we didn't have to spend our resources on some interest of different people. We could directly deal with. Because everything is developing very, very slowly. What we can do in the society, in the creative society, everything would be quite quickly because in all spheres we have a lot of managers. Of course, they are necessary, but when different interests interfere, it takes a lot of time to develop particular directions because only very, very little part of energy is spent on an actual work. And gradation exists, for example, in salaries. Maybe some people need more. Actually, people do not need more than they need for some basic needs for their house or family. I don't know how to say. Yes, we try to create such societies, but sometimes finance help, but sometimes they don't. So I think that there would be a great progress because it is quite hard to develop. We have a great enthusiasm, but this process is very slow and it's very hard. But it shouldn't be like this. It should be easier and more quickly. And now I have this feeling that we can understand how to fly to far planets, which is beyond the speed of the light. For example, how space agencies plan and speak about that. So it's high time to organize such travels. But as it is quite hard, we can't do the final step. There is an idea that there is a feeling that we are very close to something very important, but at the same time, we have a lot of issues which are quite useless. Yes, it exists with everyone and everywhere. That is why the best specialists go to bring up youth, for example, students or pupils. They want to teach, and sometimes among school teachers, it is possible to find very good specialists because they are motivated with some soul inspiration. For example, why I am doing my job, because my teacher motivated me. He told about the creative society, and sometimes I think, yes, he really told the truth. If he really told the truth, if it will exist, will occur, because he motivated me to do what I do. But sometimes I think that they just told some fairy tales. But I actually believe in it, and I have this belief since my childhood. And we should do something. We should act to get such a society. And sometimes I have some thoughts in such moments when there are some business plans or some military plans, and when we have to do something, and inside we are not so sure what to do, and I just have this idea, why do I do it? But then I have another thought, yes, I have a dream and I have to go on. And this is the life of a person who is not actually sleeping. But there are some scientists who actually sleep. They don't strive for anything. They feel fine outside, but not inside. That is my observation about my colleagues. They do not strive for anything. They do not feel fine inside, actually. Yes, that's a good point, that outside a person can pretend that he feels fine, but in a feeling you cannot deceive. So another question is, what discoveries which are now being done can change the flow of history? You know, surprisingly, but we should believe in discoveries. Yeah, sometimes people say, yes, everything is discovered, but actually it's false. There are always some people that discover something. There are always some new ideas. And astrophysics, yeah, it really has happened. As what we are talking about now, for example, it's quite incredible. Even when I was studying at the university, I heard this idea that there was a new star discovered or something like this. It was an occasion, but now it's quite a casual thing. For example, now students know about dark matter. For example, they have this understanding that a universe is quite huge. Methods of diagnostics are quite vast nowadays. The great discoveries were made. The variety of galactics and stars and exoplanets, and this information is very interesting. And discovery of exoplanets, for me, graphene was discovered. It's such a matter which was made of CO2, which has a thickness 0.2. So, but using this material, it can be fly to different planets with the speed of the light. So I don't actually expect any discoveries from the sun, because we have been observing it for quite a long time. But actually we can see something actually new. We go to see the sun and the processes on it at a very low scale, but we should be ready to see something new. Sometimes a person sees something new, but he cannot perceive it. Actually, it happens quite often. For example, for example, a horse. There is a horizontal, or there are horizontal and vertical barriers, but a horse cannot perceive a vertical barrier. Let's think about other planets. For example, Venus. It can change the vector. Our technologies can develop with the time, and we can really try to diagnose something on the Venus. Yeah, what other discoveries can take place in microcosm, for example? Yeah, I think in quantum physics, and for me it's quite obvious, because it always happens like this, that there are many works and they appear more and more. People investigate, and these investigations develop, and suddenly something really important happens. And we have this all routine process, the same ideas again and again, but suddenly there is a discovery. And astrophysics, it happened this way in astrophysics, for example. In quantum mechanics, it can also happen the same way. Yes, let's solve this paradox. Let's really discover Higgs boson. I think it is not a great impact. We actually expect it to exist. Then gravitation waves, yes, they were discovered, but actually we knew that it should exist. It's hard to say. Or maybe I just can't see it. It was expected for a long time, and finally it was discovered. I mean, these gravitation waves, but no, it's not clear what will the consequences be. Maybe only for me, because I'm not a specialist in this sphere, actually. Some scientists go to abstract ideas, quite clever people, geniuses, they have good devices, but they start to speak about some abstract stuff and measure something which is not very necessary, and the life has passed, but there is no discovery. Yes, you were busy and you were kind, and actually everything is fine, but some discoveries, some single atom materials, for example, at the same time that we discover these exoplanets, I think that it will help us to develop, and something will develop with Venus. Yeah, I have such a feeling, and everything appears quite unexpectedly. Something that appears quite unexpectedly and gives a new direction. That is my viewpoint nowadays. By the way, the influence of solar activity on a human. Unfortunately, it is not well developed. It was developed by Chizhevsky, but it was not accepted quite extensively. So there were also Tsiolkovsky and Goddard, and Tsiolkovsky was visualized ideas. It was very strange. For example, planes fly in the air, so there is no air, or it's not a lot. So he was a strange person, and he was deaf since he was 10. Yeah, as for Germany, yes, this idea came to my mind that he met some a special scientist. But Tsiolkovsky, he studied at the library and met a great scientist. And then the question was asked, what if it was overpopulation, what will happen? And then he discovered many laws, and then this reactive movement was discovered, and his article about this was published and it was considered as very strange, but then it was accepted. And now, for example, not all of his ideas were actualized, were developed. And he was also talking about gravitation, and Chizhevsky was living at the same time with him, and he understood quite well how space rhythms influence on a person, and he developed a lot. He made a lot of experiments on a planet about solar activity. He understood a lot, but he did not advance. Only now his works were discovered, and he unfortunately he didn't become a famous scientist at his lifetime, but now he became quite famous. And about Zeldovich, for example, who studied solar sparkles, and I'm quite proud that I know him and this space community. This person was quite unique. He was academician. He finished only 9 classes. He was passing a particular place, and he saw this Zeldovich and asked to bring him with him. So I will give him him 2 pumps, and he took him to take to this institute. And in the beginning, he went to buy cigarettes to people, and then he started to observe how smoke is spreading around. And with the time, he became quite an advanced scientist in different directions of science, and he created a big school. and understood. He understood how stars behave, and then his apprentices, Sunyaev, understood how to observe them. That is an example of how a person, just with a real wish, with a real inner wish to study, he didn't actually graduate from the university. He just finished 9 classes. He just has this sincere wish to understand. Yes, and became quite an incredible scientist. Excuse me.
Thank you so much, because this is the objective. It can actually change not only the life of one person, but also life of the whole civilization at all. I am so grateful for everything you've shared today, your vision that you brought on our horizons, of our understanding of the solar system, and also opened for us more of the understandings or doors to the universe. I would just also like to remind our viewers and to invite on this third international online conference, Kaleidoscope of Facts, and the topic Paleo Contact, which will happen on the 13th of October, on the 18th at Kiev time. This will be interpreted to 10 languages. Please do connect, and I propose to you to look for the trailer for this conference. Thank you so much once more, Helen. Thank you, Alexei. And I would also like to, before the trailer, I just like to mention we would like to share the information that actually moved us to the more profound study of physics and given us the understanding on how the universe works from micro to the macro sizes in a simple language, which is the Watra Primordial Physics Report. We will send you in either electronically or paper basis. It will be as useful as it's possible. Thank you so much for your time, and it was so interesting, and for all the understandings we got, not only in science but also in life and how you see the society in the future. Thank you so much. Thank you, dear friends. It was so interesting for me. It was most of the nicest parts in your job when somebody's interesting and you understand that there is a point in what you do, and that you can be better possible, and it's really worth it, and to do all that. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, dear guests, and thank you for...
What do we know about the contact of Earthlings with alien races? Is paleo contact a myth or a reality? International Research Project, live broadcast on October 13, 2020. What is paleo contact? The Anunnaki and the Apexians. Who are they, and what role do they play in the history of our planet? Hidden historical facts. What happened 24,000 years ago? Is the Earth indeed the birthplace of the human race? What happened to Mars? Who gave the unique knowledge about the structure of the universe to the African tribe of the Dogon? How will a comprehensive study of paleo contact help preserve our civilization? Evolutionary leap in development of science, the exploration of other planets and galaxies by humankind. Comprehensive development of civilization. A life worthy of a human being. All this is possible if we invite experts and scientists from various fields of science, as well as researchers and bloggers for joint research. Anyone who is interested in this topic, together, we will be able to find answers to these and other questions. It's time to bring the truth back to people. October 13th, 2020, 3rd International Online Conference Paleocontact, within the framework of the global unique project, Kaleidoscope of Facts. Initiated by participants of a Alatra International Public Movement from the USA.